Hello, this is Chad Middleton, your vocational expert. I'm here to do another video for our followers to talk about the mental health DBQ, right? The mental health DBQ, especially when it applies to a TDIU claim, all right? You know what TDIU is. If you've been following me, it's total disability due to individual unemployability. Usually you're rated less than 100%, but because you're unable to work, the VA awards you TDIU at the 100% rate. So definitely a benefit um, to those people who qualify. Okay. But getting TDIU is a process. All right. And if you apply for TDIU and you have a mental health disorder, let's say, for instance, you're rated at 70%, and you're applying for TDIU, then of course you have to do a CNP exam. Okay. To a lot of my veterans, the CNP exam is foreign and they don't know what to expect. And a lot of times they get caught off guard with how they answer questions and things like that because they don't know what the VA is looking for. Well, this video, I want to talk about the DBQ, the mental health DBQ, and how it is important in your TDIU claim. All right. A lot of times veterans don't see the DBQ. All right. It's something that you have to request after the CNP exam so you can see what the examiner had to say about your limitations. So if you've had a CNP exam, you had to have a DBQ completed by a medical examiner. A DBQ is a disabilities benefits questionnaire. The VA is going to ask you certain questions, and the medical examiner is going to mark or rate your limitations based on your responses and also based on what's already in your medical records. Okay? So I want to talk about the DBQ because, first and foremost, a lot of veterans don't know what's in it. For a vocational expert, it's very important that I see your DBQ because I quote a lot of the medical documentation that's there in your vocational evaluation report. Okay. Now, what you get, veteran, is a letter, an award letter that tells you or summarizes what the DBQ says. All right. You know that letter that you got that says, okay, we have awarded you 70% service connected disability for your depression based on these characteristics: anxiety, chronic sleep impairment, depressed mood, inability to adjust to work, inability to adjust to a work-like setting, yada, 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 all the way down to the end. And it gives you a list of symptoms. That is a letter. That's not a medical record. That is an award letter, but it's referring to the DBQ. Hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down. So the DBQ is what's completed by the medical examiner, and the letter you get afterwards from the VA summarizes the DBQ. Okay? So please go get a copy or request a copy of your DBQ. It's very helpful in your TDIU claim. I'd like to have it when I do your TDIU report, but if you don't have it, we also can use the award letter because the award letter is definitely referring to that DBQ when you don't have it. Okay, so let's talk about the DBQ for a second. For one, I like to say that any vocational expert that claims that they're doing a vocational evaluation without looking at your medical records, you don't use them. Okay? Don't use a vocational expert that is not looking at your medical records. All right? A very important part of what we do is reviewing your medical records. Even when you do your CNP exam, the examiner has a file of your medical records. Okay, it's very important. You can't say you have a limitation if you don't have a medical condition. You can't have a medical condition without having some type of limitations. All right, this is how you get the compensable rating: 0%, 10%, 20%, 30%. You get these ratings based on the severity of your conditions. How can they determine the severity without any medical records? Okay. Also, the examiner is some type of medical professional, so they can assign certain limitations to what your disabilities are saying in your medical records, as well as the information that you're providing the examiner during the C&P exam. Okay. So remember, your DBQ is a disability benefits questionnaire that's filled out by a medical examiner during your C&P exam. The information from this DBQ is provided in your award letter, and it summarizes the information that's in your DBQ. Okay, so hopefully you're following me. But in a mental health DBQ, they're going to be reviewing your medical records. I have a copy here of a veteran that has provided me with this DBQ. First of all, it talks about the diagnosis. All right. It talks about the diagnosis, what your mental health diagnosis is, and they ask the examiner to provide any comments. Also, there's information in this DBQ about any other mental health disabilities that you have, and also having the medical examiner differentiate whether or not you have multiple disabilities or mental health disabilities, and trying to identify what your limitations from these disabilities are. Okay. Then it asks you about a traumatic brain injury. It asks you about any things associated with the brain injury that might be affecting your mental health. All right. These are questions. Now, if you don't have a traumatic brain injury, of course, they're skipping over that. But then they get to a section that I want us to really, really consider. It says occupation and social impairment. This is where the C&P examiner determines how severe your impairment is. All right? How severe your impairment is. What are they basing this information on? They're basing it on your medical records and also this exam that you're participating in. All right? It says, which of the following best summarizes the veteran's level of occupation and social impairment with regard to all mental diagnosis? This is important because as a vocational expert, I am wanting to see the level of severity of your mental health condition. One would be no mental health disorder diagnosis. All right, you know that don't apply because you already have a 70% rating. Two, a mental condition has been formally diagnosed, but symptoms are not severe enough to interfere with occupational and social functioning. All right. So they say you have a condition, but your condition is not severe enough to affect you working or in your personal life. All right. Three, occupational and social impairment due to mild or transient symptoms which decrease work efficiency and ability to perform occupational tasks only during periods of significant stress. Now they just added this, y'all. They've added this because it's a minimal impairment. All right. You have an occupational and social impairment, but your conditions are mild or transient and is really controlled with medication. All right. If you have that identified by a medical examiner, it's very likely you need to get information to combat or to appeal that determination, because the examiner has determined that your situation is pretty much controlled with medication, but you still have a 50, 70% rating, but it's pretty much controlled with medication. All right. If you have that in your DBQ, go ahead and start working with another psychiatric provider or another mental health counselor or social work that is going to give another opinion about your mental health that will combat that. Now you have additional records that you can appeal that examiner's determination. Because remember, the examiner is providing an opinion. They don't treat you. They've never treated you. They probably would never see you again, but they're making a determination based on the medical records that's already in the file. Okay? So they're given an opinion based on what they feel. They're not right or wrong. They just see you. And sometimes these sessions can be virtually. You talk to them for about 15, 30 minutes virtually. You never see them in person. And they're making a comment about what they feel your functioning is. All right. So the next level up is occupational and social impairment with occasional decrease in work efficiency and intermittent periods of inability to perform occupational tasks. All right. Although generally functioning satisfactorily with normal routine behavior and self-care conversation. All right, check it out. All right. The one up above that said mild or transient symptoms. The next one says occupational and social impairment with occasional decrease in work efficiency and intermittent periods of inability to perform occupational tasks. All right. They're saying, okay, you got 70% rating. Your condition may be a little out of whack at times, but it only provides an occasional decrease in your ability to work. Okay, occasional. Now, if your DBQ says this, I might be able to work with it, especially if you have other conditions like a back condition. You got, asthma, you got COPD, you have sleep apnea, whatever. A combination of other conditions, along with that rating and how this examiner says you're limited, could be workable. All right. But if a medical examiner says that you only have an occasional decrease in work efficiency, what I would recommend is that you go see another mental health professional that may possibly disagree. Okay. Remember, if you're trying to build a case for TDIU or individual unemployability, or that your rating needs to be increased, you need to have records that will support an increase. I am not a psychiatrist, okay? I am a mental health professional, but I'm not a psychiatrist. So you need to have some documentation that supports a disagreement with how this examiner is summarizing your symptoms. Hopefully this makes sense. All right. That is the next level. Now here we go with a higher level of limitations. The next level up is occupational and social impairment with reduced reliability and productivity. All right. Notice that they are similar to these three are very similar to each other. Mild or transient symptoms, occasional decrease in work efficiency, and occupational and social impairment with reduced reliability and productivity. All right. The examiner is making their decision based on information that you're sharing. All right. During this CMP exam. Again, you're getting asked questions and you have no idea what this person is looking for. But what they're looking for is how your mental health condition is affecting you daily when it comes to work. Okay. Now, if your DBQ has this, then it's very good as evidence for your individual unemployability. I want you to listen to this. If you don't have your DBQ, you probably have it on your award letter. It says occupational and social impairment with deficiencies in most areas such as work, school, family relations, judgment, thinking, and or mood. If you have this identified in your DBQ, yeah, and you're not working, and you're 70, 80, 90% disabled, you need to come contact me. That is very good information to support your inability to work. First of all, they're saying that you have an occupational and social impairment with deficiencies in most areas, such as work, school, family relations, judgment, thinking, and or mood. All right. So if you got deficiencies in all those areas, it's very likely that psychologically, mentally, you're unable to handle the demands of work. And last but not least, the next most severe occupation and social impairment is total occupation and social impairment. Usually, in your award letter, it tells you what is the criteria for total occupational and social impairment. More than likely, most of my clients that come to see me don't have a total. If they have that box checked, you're automatically approved for TDIU. All right. Something in your medical records make that examiner feel like ain't no work for you, sir. Ain't no work. All right. We feel like your mental health by itself results in you not being able to work at all. When you don't have that, you need a vocational person, an expert, to translate how these limitations affect your ability to work. Okay? So this is a part of the DBQ where the medical examiner is making a opinion about how your limitations are affecting your ability to work. Okay? Now, for the rest of the CMP exam, they're going to ask you about uh, again, about TBI, clinical findings, the evidence that they reviewed, what kind of records did the examiner use. This particular examiner said the veteran's disability claim, medical records, current disability ratings, past VA decision letters, administrative records, and such. Okay. And then they do some more review of your family history, your marital history, military history, post-military history. This is information that the medical examiner has to fill out pertaining to why they feel just some historical background in who this veteran is. And they usually get that information either from an intake form or from the veteran himself or herself. Okay. Now, when it comes to symptoms, this is the part where you see in your award letter. The examiner is asking, check all the symptoms that apply to the veteran's diagnosis. Okay. Check all the symptoms. This is very important for a vocational expert because these symptoms are, in fact, your limitations. All right. Depressed mood, anxiety, suspiciousness, panic attacks that occur weekly, panic attacks that occur more than a week, once a week, near continuous depression or panic, chronic sleep impairment, mild memory loss, impairment of short and long-term memory, forgetting names, flattened effect, circumstantial, okay, I ain't even trying. All right, you know what I mean. Circumstantial or stereotypical speech, difficulty in understanding complex demands, impaired judgment, impaired abstract thinking. All of these limitations are listed for the examiner, and the examiner just checks the box. Okay. Now, as a veteran, you want to know what boxes that they check. Having this DBQ is important to know what they are rating. All right, and which symptoms do they feel you have? Difficulty in establishing and maintaining effective work and social relationships, difficulty in adapting to stressful circumstances, including work or work-like setting, inability to establish and maintain effective relationships, suicidal ideation, spatial disorientation, neglect of personal appearance and hygiene. The examiner is getting this information from this interview that they're having with you, plus the medical records. Also, on the side note, you understand as a vocational expert, we do exactly the same thing. We're looking at your medical records and talking to you during a individual consultation to determine how your disabilities are affecting your ability to function and to work. Okay? So all these boxes that are checked on this DBQ are also highlighted. The ones that they check are highlighted in your award letter. All right. Lastly, it talks about behavioral observations and any other symptoms that you have. It asks you, are you capable of handling your own financial affairs? Are you competent enough to, to pay your own bills, this, that, and the third? And then the examiner signs your DBQ and sends it to the VA. The VA, there's a service representative or there's a worker at the VA that gets this information. They process your claim, they're determining the level of severity, and they're making a decision based on their regulations about how severe your condition is. They type you a letter, they start processing it, and voila, you are approved for an increase. You are approved to keep your rating where it is, or sometimes they reduce your rating. Okay? So I wanted to let you guys know that in a DBQ is very important that you understand what they're asking for. The examiner is a professional, all right? You can disagree all you want, but if you're not on their level and you don't have the education that they have and you don't know what's in your record, it's a moot point. Okay? So going in, you have to understand what the examiner is looking for. And they're filling out this information on this disability benefits questionnaire to assess how severe your service-connected disabilities are. Okay? Hopefully this makes sense. Whether you use me or not, watch this video and understand what your mental health disability benefits questionnaire is going to be about. Okay? I'm hoping this makes sense to you guys. I hope that if you choose to use vision counseling as to provide vocational evaluation services, that you have this DBQ. It's not necessarily a deal breaker if you don't have it. We'll just have to be able to compensate with your other award letters and the other medical documentation that you have. You're going to need your blue button report. I got to have at least 2 years of your medical records of showing some type of treatment, showing some type of counseling, some type of medication that you're taking to assess how your condition is affecting you. Okay? So remember, DBQs are very important. You can go ahead and make a FOIA request now. A lot of people like to ask me, well, Chad, how do I request my records? Well, you just first need to call the VA, or you need to look in your paperwork that you got from the VA. And it talks about how to get your records. It's somewhere in the paperwork. They send you about 8, 9 sheets of paper. If you read through some of those pages, it talks about what you need to do to get your records if you have a disagreement or if you'd like to appeal a decision, anything like that. All of that is in your award letters. All right. So finally, I want to just to remind you, if you decide to use our services, you're going to need award letters. You're going to need your medical documentation. You can go into My Healthy Vet and you can print off 2-3 years of records. Some of my veterans send me a whole CD with all of the C file and everything on it. Some of them send me their whole medical records from 2013 to the present. I'm not. I don't need old records, okay? I do not need old records. I do not need your DD 214 for when you got out of the military in 1994, okay? I don't need it. But it's good information to have, and I can list it as records that I've reviewed. But for vocational expert purposes, I really don't need that type of information. I get some of that information from you during the intake. Okay. So, resume, which tells me about your work, your job duties, what you did. I don't want to include what I think you did as a maintenance engineer, or an industrial cleaner. I want you to tell me what was your day-to-day functions. Don't tell me what the job did. No, what we used to do, we used to fabricate. No, I need to know what you did. Okay. So when you start sharing with me your job title and what you did, I'm associating what you did with your mental health or your physical limitations to determine whether or not you can go back to that work. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. I didn't intend for this session to be this long, but I want you, those of you that have sat through it all and heard all of what I'm talking about, um, I want you to understand how important it is for me to have as much information as needed in order to do a good, comprehensive vocational evaluation report. All right, I think I'm gonna do another video on uh, artificial intelligence or AI, because I've been getting veterans that's wanting me to just sign off on AI reports or AI things that they've generated. And I need to address that in another video. But nevertheless, if you'd like to get a vocational evaluation report, you want to set up a consultation so you can talk with me face to face like this, give our office a call, 803-563-5087. Again, that number is 803-563-5087. You can visit us on the web at www.vcandvc.com, vcandvc.com, or you can email us at admin, ADMIN, at vcandvc.com. We're in Columbia, South Carolina, but we work with people all over the world. I'm nationally certified as a rehabilitation counselor. I can provide these vocational evaluations for you. I have over 20 years of work experience in the rehab counseling field. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in the state of South Carolina. So, having said all of that, thank you guys for checking us out. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We're going to have more information. Hopefully this information will enlighten you and make you more educated about the claims process, especially when dealing with the VA. I think I've covered everything I need to cover for DBQs. Until next time, you guys take care. God bless.